What happens when one of television's most controversial legends sits across from a daytime icon who never backs down? On live TV, what started as a conversation about climate change erupted into something far deeper. A raw, unscripted battle over truth, legacy, and the cost of silence. Bill Cosby versus Whoopi Goldberg, a clash that wasn't just about global warming, it was about values, generational guilt, and the question no one wants to answer: are we too late to save what matters? The cameras kept rolling, the audience was stunned, and by the end, one of them was gone. The studio lights of The View beamed brighter than usual, almost as if they were anticipating something no one was ready for. The audience murmured with a strange energy, part curiosity, part disbelief. Whispers floated through the room like static electricity. Is it really him? Why now? Whoopi Goldberg sat at the center of the table, her expression unreadable. Beside her were Joy Behar, Sunny Hostin, and Anna Navarro, all unusually quiet as the camera panned across the set. Whoopi leaned into her mic and exhaled slowly. Today's guest needs no introduction. For decades, he was one of television's most recognizable voices, and in recent years, one of its most controversial. This morning, he joins us to talk about something that affects us all: climate change. She paused, her tone diplomatic but taut. Please welcome Bill Cosby. A ripple ran through the audience. Applause trickled in, hesitant and restrained, some clapping out of politeness, others folding their arms. There were no cheers, no whoops, just a low hum of confusion. Bill Cosby stepped onto the stage slowly, dressed in a dark sweater and slacks, his posture slightly hunched, but his eyes scanning the crowd with a spark of defiance. No hugs, no handshakes, just a tight nod toward the table as he approached his seat. Joy muttered under her breath, "This'll be interesting." Whoopi forced a smile. "Mr. Cosby, welcome." "Thank you," he replied simply, his voice easy but devoid of warmth. Whoopi dove in, not wasting time. "You've returned to the public eye lately, and you've been vocal, especially online, about climate change. A lot of people were surprised by your stance. You've said the panic over global warming is, quote, more emotional than factual. You want to explain that?" Cosby folded his hands calmly. "I've seen decades of crisis, Whoopi. I remember when they said acid rain would kill the forests, when we were told overpopulation would destroy the earth by the year 2000. None of that happened. Now we're saying the world's going to end because it's hot in July? Come on." Some in the crowd gasped audibly. A few muttered, "Oh no." Sunny Hostin leaned forward. "Just to clarify, are you saying climate change isn't real?" "I'm saying it's exaggerated. Weather changes. It's always changed. But we're teaching our children that the sky is falling. We've replaced science with fear." Whoopi's jaw tightened slightly. "Science says we're in trouble. The hottest years on record, rising sea levels, mass extinction events. That's not fear, that's data." Cosby didn't flinch. "I respect data, but I also respect history. And history shows people in power use fear to control. If we scare people enough, they'll accept anything: higher taxes, less freedom, censorship." Anna Navarro cut in, trying to break the rising tension. "But isn't some fear necessary if it leads to action? People are changing habits, using less plastic, switching to green energy." "Out of guilt, not understanding. That's not education, it's indoctrination." The room grew colder. Joy Behar crossed her arms. "You sound like a Facebook uncle who just discovered YouTube documentaries." Laughter broke out, light but laced with nerves. Cosby leaned back slightly. "And you sound like someone who trusts headlines more than homework." The laughter vanished. Whoopi raised her hand calmly but firmly. "We can go back and forth on articles and opinions all day, but here's the bottom line, Bill. This is our house, and we believe in science here. Cosby looked her dead in the eye. And I believe in asking questions. That used to be called intelligence. Now it's called denial. The audience murmured again, unsure whether to applaud or groan. Whoopi sat still for a moment, then leaned in. Well, buckle up, because we've got a lot more to ask. The tension had cracked the surface. No one was laughing anymore. This wasn't just an uncomfortable segment. It was the beginning of a storm. The tension in the studio thickened like fog. The polite applause from earlier had long faded, replaced by an uneasy silence. Bill Cosby sat calmly, but his words had begun to splinter the air like cracks in glass. Whoopi Goldberg adjusted her seat, her expression unreadable, but her eyes burned with focus. Sonny Hostin leaned forward again, tapping the table lightly. Mr. Cosby, let's be honest, this isn't about one opinion. The scientific consensus is overwhelming. Over 97% of climate scientists agree global warming is real and human-caused. Are they all wrong? Cosby smiled, but it didn't reach his eyes. Consensus doesn't equal truth. At one time, there was consensus that the earth was flat, that tobacco was healthy, that women couldn't vote. Science grows from questions, not conformity. A few people in the audience clapped, but most just exchanged glances, unsure how to react. Whoopi leaned in, tone sharp. But that's not what this is. You're not asking questions. You're sowing doubt in the face of facts. You're using your platform to undermine a crisis that's already costing people their homes, their health, their lives. Cosby shrugged slightly. And yet, I'm the one being scolded for not marching to the drumbeat. We used to reward independent thought. Now we punish it. Joyce scoffed. Independent thought is great until it ignores melting glaciers. Laughter broke through, but it quickly died when Cosby turned to her, his tone dropping. And what have we done with all this fear, Joy? Sold more electric cars? Taxed the middle class in the name of the planet? While all the elites still fly private jets to climate summits. That's not activism, it's a performance. Ana Navarro shifted uncomfortably. Okay, but you can't deny the reality on the ground. Puerto Rico, California, Australia. Climate disasters are hitting harder, more often. And disasters have always hit, Anna, Cosby said, cutting her off. That's not new. The earth changes. It breathes. But this new religion of climate panic, where any dissent is labeled dangerous, that's the real threat. Whoopi's voice cut in like a blade. No, Bill, the real threat is pretending nothing's wrong while the world literally burns. The audience erupted in applause. Cosby didn't blink. You're passionate, Whoopi. I respect that. But passion doesn't excuse hypocrisy. I've seen you talk about the environment while wearing diamonds mined from places devastated by human greed. Where's the outrage for that? Whoopi's eyes narrowed. Her voice dropped an octave. You want to talk about hypocrisy? You've spent years asking people to separate the art from the man, asking for grace. But now you sit here demanding to be heard on a subject you've barely studied, dismissing scientists with PhDs because it's convenient for your worldview. A murmur rippled across the room. That hit. Cosby leaned forward now, finally dropping his calm mask. You think because I've been silent, I have nothing to say? That I don't read? Don't think? I've lived longer than most people on this planet. I've seen governments lie. I've seen movements hijacked. Forgive me if I don't trust the slogans. Sonny looked around the table, then back at Cosby. But what do you offer in return then? Silence? Shrugging at the fire while it grows? At least the scientists and activists are trying to fix it. Cosby's voice lowered, gravelly. I offer perspective. That sometimes the loudest voices aren't the wisest, that we've lost the ability to disagree without being destroyed, that maybe, just maybe, we've become addicted to panic. Whoopi stood slightly from her chair. No, Bill, we've become addicted to avoiding responsibility. And when you use your voice to downplay a crisis this big, you're not being wise, you're being reckless. A hush fell over the studio. Even the background hum of the crew seemed to fade. Then came a single voice from the audience, sharp, loud, and emotional. She's right. Applause broke out again, this time louder.
It wasn't laughter anymore. It was heat. It was sides being chosen. Cosby looked around the room, expression unreadable. He folded his hands again, slower this time. "Well," he said softly, "looks like we've already decided who gets to speak and who gets silenced." Whoopi didn't respond. Not yet. But the storm was coming. The sparks weren't just flying anymore. They were about to ignite.
The air in the studio had turned electric. No one moved. No one even sipped water. What started as a civil disagreement had transformed into something raw, an emotional tug-of-war between two cultural titans who had, at different times, shaped America's living rooms. Whoopi Goldberg sat still, but her eyes were locked on Bill Cosby, not with rage, but with something deeper: sadness, disappointment, maybe even betrayal. She finally spoke. "You know, Bill, I grew up watching you. You were the father figure so many Black families never had. You made people laugh. You gave them hope. And now you're sitting here acting like the planet falling apart is just another headline you can roll your eyes at." Cosby's face stayed neutral, but his fingers twitched slightly. "I never asked to be anyone's father. I was an entertainer, a storyteller, and I'm still telling stories. This one just doesn't have a happy ending unless we stop lying to ourselves." Joy Behar jumped in, sharper now. "Or maybe the happy ending comes when people in power start listening to the ones begging for change. Maybe the problem isn't fear, it's arrogance." Cosby turned to Joy, his tone clipped. "Arrogance is pretending your celebrity makes you an expert." Ana Navarro nodded slowly, but spoke carefully. "But that goes both ways, Mr. Cosby. You're using your platform too. The difference is people are begging to believe you, and when you minimize a crisis like this, it gives others permission to ignore it too." He sighed. "You all think I'm minimizing. I'm not. I'm asking questions. But here's the thing, when your questions lead people away from solutions, when they make it easier to do nothing, then yes, they're dangerous." Then she paused. Her voice broke, just a little. "I lost my cousin in Hurricane Ida. Flash flood. She drowned in her car. The water rose too fast. She called me while it was happening. You think I care whether she had all the data? You think she had time to be skeptical? The climate didn't wait for a peer-reviewed paper." Cosby blinked. For the first time, he looked shaken. The audience sat in stunned silence. He said quietly, "I'm sorry." Whoopi stared at him. Her tone softened, not with forgiveness, but with truth. Sorry doesn't bring her back. Sorry doesn't cool the oceans or stop the fires. And when people like you, people with influence, treat this like some overblown panic, you don't just waste airtime, you waste lives. Cosby looked down. He rubbed his temple, then leaned into the mic. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone. I came here because I thought maybe we could have a real conversation, one where doubt wasn't treated like a crime." Ana leaned in gently. "But Bill, doubt has a cost too, especially when it delays action. And action is the only thing we have left." A long silence followed. Even Joy Behar had nothing to say. Cosby glanced up at Whoopi, who was holding back tears. Not dramatic, not performative, just human. "You don't think I care," he said slowly. "But I do. I've lost faith in institutions, in narratives, in what's real and what's not." Whoopi nodded. "Then maybe instead of arguing, we rebuild that faith together. Not by denying the storm, but by facing it." The audience clapped, gently at first, then louder. Cosby looked around the room. For the first time since walking on stage, he looked tired, exhausted even. He nodded once, then said softly, "I can listen." It wasn't a surrender, but it was something. A crack in the wall. The flashpoint had come and gone, but the heat still lingered, and everyone in that room knew this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. The moment the cameras stopped rolling, the studio didn't exhale. It held its breath. Producers whispered frantically into headsets.
Audience members remained in their seats, stunned. No upbeat outro music played, just silence and the buzz of something enormous having just happened on live television. Backstage, Whoopi Goldberg stepped away from the set quietly. A stagehand tried to offer her water. She waved it off. Her shoulders were stiff, her expression unreadable, but her eyes still glistened from the emotional blow she delivered moments earlier. Bill Cosby lingered on set longer than expected. A makeup artist hesitated, unsure whether to approach him. Cosby stood alone, staring at the floor where the studio lights reflected faintly, almost like he was looking for something he lost mid-broadcast. Within 15 minutes, Twitter exploded. Bill Cosby just questioned climate change on air. Whoopi shut it down with pure emotion. "This isn't the 90s. We believe science now. Sit down, Cosby." That moment when Whoopi said the climate didn't wait for a peer-reviewed paper, chills, absolute chills. Clips circulated faster than the production team could issue statements. Media outlets pounced. CNN, a battle of generations. Whoopi Goldberg and Bill Cosby clash on climate crisis. Fox News, Cosby raises questions. Is climate alarmism out of control? Variety, daytime TV shakes as two icons collide over global warming. By the next morning, Cosby's name was trending, but not for his legacy in television. A new generation was being introduced to him not as Cliff Huxtable, but as a man out of step with a world on fire. And it wasn't just viewers reacting. Celebrities weighed in. Mark Ruffalo posted, "We're out of time for debate. Whoopi spoke truth. Thank you for not letting it slide." Candace Owens, by contrast, tweeted, "Cosby wasn't reckless. He was honest. The left fears conversation." Oprah, noticeably silent during the first day, finally released a one-line statement. "We all have a duty to listen, learn, and face reality, no matter how uncomfortable." Even students and scientists began stitching together Whoopi's impassioned speech with real footage: hurricanes, floods, ice caps collapsing. TikTok was flooded with clips under the hashtag Whoopi was right. As for Cosby, in a rare move, he issued a short statement through his publicist the next afternoon. "I meant no disrespect. I've always encouraged independent thinking. I hear the pain expressed yesterday, and I will reflect on it. But for many, the damage or the awakening was already done." At ABC headquarters, executives debated whether to re-air the episode. Sponsors were split. Some praised the show's boldness. Others quietly pulled ads for the week, unwilling to be caught in the crossfire. Back on set, Whoopi returned 2 days later. No monologue, no long recap, just a quiet acknowledgement. "The conversation we had this week wasn't comfortable, but it mattered. And I hope people don't just share it, I hope they act on it." She received a standing ovation, not just from the audience, but from her fellow panelists. As for Bill Cosby, he hasn't returned to daytime since. But in homes across America, the debate lingers, like smoke after a fire. Not just about climate change, but about who gets to speak, who gets heard, and what truth looks like when it's no longer theoretical.
Weeks passed. The firestorm surrounding the episode had quieted, but its embers still glowed. Clips from the broadcast were now part of classroom discussions, environmental campaigns, and late-night comedy monologues. Even after the media cycle moved on, something had shifted. This wasn't just a TV debate anymore. It had become a cultural flashpoint, a line in the sand between denial and action, silence and accountability. And in the middle of it all were two people: Bill Cosby, once the voice of warmth and family values; Whoopi Goldberg, the moral compass of daytime television, who didn't flinch when the moment demanded more than words. In a special segment taped weeks later, Whoopi sat alone on a darkened stage. No co-hosts, no audience, just her and the camera. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy," she began. "Not just mine, not just Bill's, but all of ours." She clasped her hands.
We grew up believing legacy was what you left behind in awards, buildings, memories. But I think legacy is also in what you're willing to face, what you're willing to say when saying it costs something. She paused. A long, quiet breath. Bill Cosby meant a lot to me. I defended him when others wouldn't. I believed in the version of him that helped raise generations through the screen. But life's not simple. Neither is truth. Footage played briefly, clips from that unforgettable day. Her cousin's story, Cosby's disbelief, the quiet, "I'm sorry." Then back to her. I don't hate Bill. I don't cancel him. But I also won't excuse him. Because right now, people are dying, not just from floods or heat, but from delay. From conversations that don't happen soon enough, from voices that stay silent. Meanwhile, Bill Cosby had retreated from the spotlight once again. A scheduled podcast appearance was quietly canceled. His rep said he was taking time to reflect. But online, the conversation continued. Not about scandal, not even about politics, but about the question Whoopi had left echoing in every living room. What are you willing to say when saying it costs you something? Teachers played the clip in environmental science classes. Activists quoted it during their speeches. And on TikTok, a new trend emerged. Teens and young adults filming themselves, planting trees, cleaning beaches, donating to climate efforts, tagged with #LegacyIsAction. The views ratings spiked in the weeks following the episode, not because people craved drama, but because they saw something real. Two people, two generations, facing a problem that transcended opinion, the fate of the Earth. In an interview for Vanity Fair, Ana Navarro reflected on the moment. It wasn't about winning the argument. It was about what we leave behind. And Whoopi reminded us that our children are watching. Not just our shows, but our choices. Even Joy Behar had admitted that episode, it wasn't TV. It was history. And maybe that's what made it stick. Not because it was scandalous, not because it was loud, but because it was human. A woman mourning a loss, a man struggling with doubt, and a world caught in between, still deciding what kind of legacy it wants to leave. By the time the segment ended, Whoopi looked directly into the lens. One last time. Maybe we can't change everything, but we can change something. And that starts with saying the truth. Out loud. The screen faded to black. No applause, no exit music. Just a single line in white text. Legacy is what you do when the cameras aren't rolling.